Exposed, 7 haunted childhood traumas, the sinister truth behind unexplained fear. In Cedar Grove, where every house looked like a moldy sugar cookie, Sarah's unease simmered just beneath the surface. Her heart raced as the laughter of children spiraled into a piercing shriek, tears streaming down Ella's cheeks after a fall. What was normal? With mounting bills and loss corroding her spirit, every unsettling event felt like a cruel joke hovering like a shadow over her often persecuted soul. As dusk draped the sky, a chill ran through her, gnawing at her mind like a rat gnawing at a festering piece of cheese. Then came the notes. Each one slipped quietly into her mailbox, bore cryptic messages that simmered with foreboding. "You're not alone, Sarah. He still watches." Their scratchy handwriting was a visceral reminder of darkness she'd buried, like Mr. Thompson, the neighbor who disappeared like a puff of smoke when she was a child. The sudden rustle outside her window would send her heart into a frenzy. Were those whispers from the wind or something more sinister? Her knees would weaken with paranoia as she clutched Ella and Max tight, their innocence a fragile glow in the shadow-strewn cul-de-sac. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. One night, as Sarah pushed the porch light on, illuminating ghosts of the past, she caught a glimpse of a familiar figure standing across the street. It was a face she thought she could trust. It made her blood turn to ice, heart hammering like a jackhammer deep within her chest. Nobody should be lurking there, yet it felt as though the very fabric of Cedar Grove held secrets sharper than a murder weapon. Her hands trembled, clenching and unclenching as if desperately grasping for safety that slipped further away. The neighborhood felt suffocating, sinister looks cast her way. What were they hiding? Each creak of the floorboards twisted her stomach. She could practically feel the eyes watching, always watching. The kids' innocent giggles placed a noose around her sanity. They trusted the world she'd failed to protect. Days blurred into nights, and just when Sarah thought she could piece together sanity, a final note slipped under her doorstep, chilling her blood colder than the icy winter breeze. You thought you were safe in Cedar Grove? Just like her, you are next. The crushing truth awaited her. What had started as a simple struggle to keep her children safe morphed into a desperate urge to unlock the truth buried in the silence. Shadows danced menacingly, whispering secrets only they knew. Could she shield her children from the darkness entwined in their home, or would they, too, slip into the abyss of horror that hung like a storm cloud? Each tick of the clock tightened the grip of fear around her throat, reminding her that when the walls close in, the real monsters emerge. The morning sun struggled to penetrate the thick fog enveloping Cedar Grove. Sarah had barely slept, haunted by nightmares that twisted old fears into grotesque shapes. She felt the weight of those chilling notes pressing down on her chest, suffocating clarity when it was most needed. The kids, unaware of the horrors lurking just beyond the light, played in the yard, their laughter an unsettling reminder of innocence. But Sarah wasn't fooled. The way the neighbors glanced at her, those sideways looks dripping with something unspoken, made her stomach churn. She was an outsider now, branded by the very shadows she fought to understand. As Ella and Max chased each other around the swing set, the sound felt like a taunt echoing back to her. You thought you were safe. When she finally worked up the courage to confront the mystery of the notes, the specter of dread wrapped around her heart again. You are next. The very words danced in her mind, exposing fractures in her resolve. She couldn't let them sense her fear. Not now. Not ever. With trembling hands, she gathered the scattered notes and moved to the kitchen table, light filtering in through grimy windows. Each letter felt sticky with past regrets. Every stroke of the pen bleached her spirit, forcing her to reconstruct fragments of the time she thought long buried. It felt like she was peeling back layers of her own memories, chapter by chapter, until she was left raw and exposed. Then, the crash of a window shattered her thoughts into tiny shards. Sarah leapt up, heart racing, instinctively pulling Ella and Max close to her as she dashed towards the source. The sound seemed to come from the basement, a place she had grown to dread more than any dark alley. Climbing down the creaky stairs, each step felt like treason against her instinct for safety. The air thickened, growing heavy with the musty scent of forgotten things and regret. At the bottom, the faintest shimmer caught her eye. An envelope slid halfway out from under the old furnace. It was unmistakable, marked with the same scratchy handwriting, a sinister call back to the messages that had haunted her. The basement felt alive, walls pressing in, shadows converging on her, the walls an audience to her descent into madness. Her fingers numbly reached for the envelope, and when she pulled it free, the door slammed shut behind her, plunging the basement into darkness. Panic surged as she tugged at the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Then silence fell. The kind that felt thick, oppressive, a tangible weight. In the void, her heart thudded, a frantic drumbeat of survival. She turned back to the envelope. The dim light from a crack above illuminated the edges, and she fumbled with it, tearing it open like a desperate plea. Inside it read, "You must remember her name. Only then can you be free." A name. A forgotten name. But as she stood, frozen in fear, the shadows seemed to whisper around her, their voices a meld of laughter and cries she couldn't place, pressing her toward a connection she had repressed for too long. What name? Suddenly she heard a soft knock above, a gentle tap that felt like a death knell. The children. The basement door was still locked, and she couldn't see her way to it. She turned back, the ink still wet in her hands, and the lights flicked off, plunging her into darkness. As she gasped for breath, something clawed at her heart. The whispers grew frantic, louder, and all she could think was, what had she locked away? What was coming for them? And when she realized, it might already be too late. The air crackled with tension, the silence around Sarah thickening like fog. She stood at the bottom of the basement stairs, heart pounding, the envelope burning in her grip. Shadows danced on the edges of her vision, flickering as if teasing her with possibilities and dangers. Her breathing quickened, each gasp a desperate plea for clarity. The whispers became a chorus, a jumbled symphony of voices echoing the words she couldn't catch. Her children were above. Every second felt like an eternity, as she fought against the darkness pressing in. What name? She whispered to the void, but only silence answered. The basement door was unyielding. Panic clawed at her throat, and fear wrapped its icy fingers around her heart. She stepped back, trying to remember the last time she felt safe. The kids. If they were playing, they might not notice the creeping dread that shadowed her every thought. One breath at a time she muttered, forcing herself to focus. Think, Sarah, think. She glanced down at the envelope, running her fingers over the strange handwriting, a wretchedly familiar scrawl that held weight beyond ink. And then, as if on cue, the memories surged forth, fleeting glimpses of her childhood, terrifying shadows, laughter twisted into screams, darkness creeping into corners, and a name that echoed just beyond reach. What had she buried so deep that even she had forgotten it? The kids' voices broke her reverie, mixed with the distant sound of toys. They were singing now, their innocent melody somehow chilling, like an uneasy lullaby meant to soothe the troubled soul. She could almost hear Ella's giggle interspersed with Max's deep chuckle, grounding her momentarily. Forcing herself to act, Sarah squeezed her eyes shut against the growing shadows, the whispers intensifying, curling around her. She pulled at the basement door again, desperation rising as she threw her weight into it. It resisted, mocking her attempts to escape, to be free of the past clawing at her now. A cold chill brushed against her neck, as if a breath had landed softly there. "Get out!" she screamed, throwing herself against the door one last time. The wood splintered, creaking under the pressure as it began to yield. With a jolt, the door popped open, revealing the gloomy hallway lit dimly by daylight struggling through the fog outside. Coughing, she stumbled forward, her heart racing. She began to run, ascending the stairs 3 at a time, desperation fueling every step. But as she breached the threshold into the kitchen, time froze. The scene before her was a macabre tapestry woven of a parent's worst nightmare. The kids were there, their laughter lingering in the still air, but they stood rooted to the spot, staring at something behind her, horror etched across their innocent faces. Something loomed just out of sight, a presence that felt ancient and wrathful. A pulse twisted through the air, the whispers becoming screams, no longer just echoes of the past but terrors of the present. "Mom!" Ella's voice cracked, pulling Sarah's gaze. "She's here!" Something cold and unforgiving pressed against the back of her neck, bringing with it a suffocating familiarity. Sarah spun around, dread filling every corner of her mind, heart hammering as she faced her own haunted past. The name danced at the tips of her thoughts, pulsing to the rhythm of her fraying sanity. And there, as reality blurred with the shadows, she realized she had forgotten the name that could save them all, the only key to what stood before her. The answers lay in the abyss, and the abyss knew her all too well. "Please," she whispered, trembling as the walls seemed to close in around her. "What have I done? What do you want?" The light flickered, revealing a glimpse of the shadow's true form, shifting, coiling. She could almost hear the name she'd long forgotten, slipping just out of reach like a dream fading at dawn. What was the price of remembering? And could she afford to pay it before it claimed everything she loved? All she felt was dread as the figure loomed, drawing closer. It wasn't he just there to haunt her, it wanted her to confront the truth, and the clock was ticking down. A piercing howl echoed through the kitchen, shattering the uneasy stillness. Sarah felt it reverberate within her bones, an ancient cry that seemed to resonate with her own buried fears. The figures of her children hunched closer together, their eyes widening, brimming with terror as they caught sight of what she feared most. The shadow loomed larger, hungry and insatiable, pulling every bit of warmth from the air. Dark tendrils extended toward her, reaching, searching. Instinctively, Sarah backed away, dread consuming her. She couldn't see its face, didn't even know if it had one, but she felt its gaze, piercing and unforgiving. A weight settled in her chest, a reminder that her past was beckoning her, demanding recognition. "Mom!" Ella cried again, trembling. It's Madeline!" Madeline. The name burst forth from the recesses of Sarah's mind, flooding her with memories soaked in pain. A ghost from her childhood, an uninvited guest that had always lurked in her peripheral vision, feeding off her fear. She had thought she was free, had clung to that fragile delusion all these years. The memories rushed back, the whispers in the night, fingers that curled around her heart, and the games they played in the dim light of her childhood home, games that ended with laughter taking on a sinister edge. Those moments had slipped away with the years, but in that instant, they returned, vivid and vile, each one a shard of glass in her mind. "Stay back!" she screamed, the words ripping from her throat like a primal warning. But the shadow surged forward, a dark wave breaking against her resolve. Every instinct told her to run, to flee, but where could she go? The walls felt like they were closing in. The house had become a prison built on the foundation of her own nightmares. "Mommy!" Max's voice trembled. "I'm scared." At that, Sarah turned, locking her gaze upon her kids, the fleeting innocence in their eyes igniting a spark within her, an overwhelming need to protect them at all costs. "I won't let it take you!" she shouted to the void, though her own heart quaked with uncertainty. As she stepped toward the dark presence, something within her twisted, a knot of fear and strength. Facing past demons was no simple task. It required a willingness to confront the truth. The whispers rose around her, a cacophony of doubt and dread. But suddenly, silence fell. The hollow air smelled of must and decay, and in the stillness, Madeline seemed to pause, hesitating. It was a flicker, a moment of doubt, enough for Sarah to take a breath deep and cleansing. She felt her pulse, steadying as she thought of her children, the sunlight that had once blessed their lives, bright and limitless. "Madeline!" she shouted, each syllable firm and sure, echoing against the specter that hovered like smoke. "You don't belong here. You have no power over us." As the name surged forth, the shadows shrieked and twisted, writhing like snakes in agony. The lights flickered wildly, illuminating the room in flashes, revealing terrifying glimpses of what lurked beyond. She could see the rage in its form, the anger churning within like a tempest. but she kept her gaze steady. "What do you want?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling but resolute. "What do you want from me?" The shadows hesitated, and in that moment she felt the fabric of reality shift, just slightly, as if they were both stepping into a new domain, a world lingering between torment and redemption. But just then, a chill swept through her, colder than the air before, a reminder that time was slipping, a reminder of what she had almost forgotten. "What price will you pay?" came the haunting whisper, the shadows curling around her ankles, as if inviting her into a dance of despair. "You cannot escape." In the heart-stopping silence that followed, the figure lunged forward, seeking the truth she had nearly buried alive. Sarah felt her heart freeze. She had to decide, right then. To surrender to the past or fight for her children. Time was running out. What choice would she make as the darkness crept closer, and was freedom even an option anymore? Sarah's heart thundered in her chest as a bitter wind whipped through the kitchen. The shadows lunged, closing in around her, a twisting mass of despair that threatened to swallow her whole. She could almost feel Madeline's fingers brushing against her skin, icy and demanding, as memories of fear slashed through her thoughts like a razor. "I will not let you take them!" Sarah screeched, her voice filled with a mix of rage and desperation. She surged forward, the adrenaline coursing through her veins, igniting a fire within. The kitchen flickered ominously, as if the very light itself was terrified of what lurked in the dark. But the specter towered over her, drawing power from her fear. She caught fleeting glimpses of Madeline's form, half-formed yet glaringly evident, an embodiment of every dark moment Sarah had tried to bury. It grinned as shadows peeled back, revealing sharp, jagged teeth glistening with malice. "Mom! Don't!" Ella cried, her voice wavering, pulling Sarah back to her children. She turned, locking eyes with Max, who clutched a worn teddy bear, his thumb in his mouth, a remnant of innocence clashing against the chilling reality. In that moment she realized that the choice wasn't hers alone, it was about her children too. The shadow writhed in frustration, energy crackling with intensity. "You did not protect them then," it hissed. The words echoed with painful clarity, a solitary arrow striking right through Sarah's heart. It was true. She hadn't been able to protect herself. How could she protect them now? "I have changed," she roared, her words ripping through the air like a defiant battle cry. "Madeline holds no power over me anymore." A brightness swelled within her, igniting a glimmer of hope in the darkness. The response was an anguished wail, echoing off the walls, shaking her to her very core. The shadow recoiled as if struck, leaving a gaping void in its place, allowing Sarah to breathe if only for a moment. "Sarah!" A soft, familiar voice floated through the echoing air, sending chills dancing along her spine. It shouldn't he have been there, shouldn't he be speaking? "Remember me." Fear twisted into confusion as a memory flickered before her eyes, the face of a little girl with wild, dark curls, a mischievous grin, and eyes that sparkled with mischief. "Madeline?" Sarah gasped, the name spilling out as a tremor of recognition coursed through her. "You were my friend." The shadows pulsed in agitation, and the air thickened with a tension that felt like a loaded spring. "You abandoned me. You left me in the darkness." The voice was both Madeline's and something much darker, a blend of confusion and wrath that breathed feelings of loss into the room, as if haunting echoes from a forgotten past had returned. "No! I tried to save you." Sarah's voice cracked, but still, she stood tall against the surging shadow, the remnants of past and present colliding around them like gravestones in the fog. At the same moment, a loud bang reverberated through the house, rattling the very bones of the walls, making her grip the kitchen counter for support. The noise stole her breath, an alien presence drawn into their battle, a harbinger of something far worse lurking just beyond their horizon. "What is happening?" she whispered, her eyes shooting toward the door as the whispers became a chant, an incantation calling for her tribe to join in a dance of despair. And then, without warning, the kitchen lights flickered once again, plunging them into darkness. "Mommy!" Ella cried, pure fear tinging her voice, both a plea and a challenge against the encroaching terror. Sarah's heart raced. She fought to keep the fear from overwhelming her, knowing that choice beckoned fiercely. But darkness poured through the cracks, twisting shadows only deepening as if breathing its hypnotic haze over them. "Will you fight or surrender?" it echoed, drawing closer, poised to snatch her back into the abyss. With a hold on her children that pulsed with love and fear, Sarah took a hesitant step forward into the unknown realm. The darkness loomed larger, waiting. But what she didn't know was what lay beyond that veil, an even older horror, buried deeper than Madeline's twisted remnants of betrayed childhood memories, one that might demand an unimaginable price. The kitchen spun with the weight of Sarah's choice, darkness swirling like a tempest. Shadows stretched and writhed, feeding on the flickers of doubt that lit within her. She felt Ella tugging at her shirt, panic radiating from the tiny body. "Mom, please," Max whimpered, his grip on the teddy bear tightening. "I know," Sarah whispered, urgency tinging her voice. "I know." The voice from the void coiled around her, taunting, "They will suffer like you did. Did you think you could escape me?" Sarah's breath itched, the cold grip of fear scraping against her soul. The memories flooded back, echoes of laughter turned to screams, of innocence twisted into pain. Madeline had been a friend once, but darkness had consumed her. "Enough!" Sarah shouted, surprising even herself. "You don't own me anymore." The hatred in the air became palpable, a foul stench of betrayal laced within. The shadows recoiled, but only momentarily. With each moment, they crept closer, coiling around her ankles like snakes, whispering, begging her to yield. "Mom, it's so dark," Ella's voice trembled, and the terror etched into her face shattered Sarah's resolve. "I'm scared," Max squeaked, his innocent eyes wide, the teddy bear now a shield against an impending doom. "Stay with me," Sarah commanded, her throat tightening. She reached down to pull them closer, their warmth a thread of hope in the gnawing cold. The shadows leapt again, and the specter of Madeline materialized, sharpening into form, her eyes filled with anguish and rage. "You think this is about you, Sarah? You think you can win?" The walls shuddered at Madeline's words, and the glass in the cabinets rattled. "You've drawn them here, just like you drew me. It will always be your fault." The accusation twisted the knife deeper, guilt clamped around her heart like a vice. "No!" Sarah screamed, her voice cracking, battling against the encompassing tide. "I won't let you take them. Fight with me, kids!" As if by some unspoken pact, Ella clutched her mother's hand tighter. Max stepped closer, still trembling but lifting his chin, a small act of defiance nudged by love. The entity shrieked in response, waves of unbearable wails crashing through the air. "You're all mine! They will belong to the dark. Just like you!" Suddenly, flickering lights exploded into brightness, piercing through the thick web of shadows, illuminating the kitchen in stark contrast. The specter screeched, its form wavering, momentarily losing its grip. "Run!" Sarah yelled, pulling her children toward the door. "Now!" But with each step, the shadows reached out, dragging at their feet, trying to pull them back. Sarah could feel it, a cold finger of desperation scraping along her spine. "Mom!" "The basement!" Ella shouted, her gaze darting toward the door leading underground. "Are you sure?" Sarah faltered, momentarily caught between instinct and fear. "It's the only way," Ella replied, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Without another word, Sarah changed course, torn between hope and dread as they lunged for the basement door. It creaked ominously as they flung it open. The steps seemed to descend into a deeper blackness, beckoning them as something ancient snarled from the dark. With every ounce of her being, Sarah yelled, "Stay together! Don't let go of my hand!" And as they plunged into the void, an unsettling whisper pierced through the noise, "You can't escape me. Not like before." The air grew heavy, thick with an unknown dread. A chill raced up her spine. What awaited in the dark? "What's down there, Mom?" Max's voice quivered, barely audible, but each echo bounced ominously off unseen walls. "I don't know!" she screamed, adrenaline surging. The basement swallowed them whole, darkness closing in with a voracious grip, and the shadows above dissolved into a distant memory. But somewhere beyond the churning dark, the voice of an ancient horror promised, "This is just the beginning," and in that moment, Sarah realized, they had stepped into a much deeper nightmare. What lay buried below would not just reveal their fears, but unleash an unimaginable horror unlike anything they had faced before. The darkness enveloped them, thick and suffocating. Sarah felt her heart thump like a war drum, the sound echoing in the eerie silence. Every step down the wooden stairs creaked underfoot, the sound a thunderclap in the stillness. Max clung to her leg, his breath shaky, while Ella pressed against her side, wide-eyed. "Mom, I don't like this," Max whimpered, the terror in his voice piercing through her panic. "I know, honey, but we have to keep moving." Sarah's voice trembled as she forced herself to sound brave. The weight of unseen eyes pressed against her shoulders, watching, waiting. With each step down, the air grew colder, a draft creeping up from the depths below. A faint whisper drifted through the blackness, brushing against her skin like icy fingertips. "Come to me, it's so much nicer down here." "What is that?" Ella whispered, fear cracking her voice. "Silence," Sarah snapped, a sudden surge of anger against the unseen. "Don't listen. Just hold my hand." They descended further, deeper into the pit of despair, and soon the stairs ended, plunging them into utter darkness. Sarah reached into her pocket, heart racing, fumbling for the flashlight. When she found it, it felt like a lifeline. The beam flickered to life, slicing through the black, revealing crude walls lined with dirt and stone. "What is this place?" Max's voice was barely above a whisper, barely masking the sob that threatened. "I don't know," she said, fear ripping through her. As she scanned the space, the beam caught something glimmering, piles of old, broken toys scattered across the floor. A tattered doll, its eyes empty and staring, lay 1 foot away. Sarah nearly stumbled back, the memories crashing down as a chill gripped her heart. She had seen those toys before, in pictures of her own lost childhood. They belonged to the children who had vanished from her old neighborhood, children she had once played with, now parts of a nightmare. "Mom!" Ella squeaked, her face pale. "Keep close!" Sarah shouted, fighting the urge to retreat. "We can't dwell on the past. We have to focus on." A loud bang reverberated through the basement, shaking the ground beneath them. It felt like the world was caving in. The beam faltered, flickering in response to the disturbance. "Run!" Sarah shouted, pulling them toward a dim light at the far end of the room. But just as they started moving, cold hands grabbed at her ankles, tugging her back, their grip icy and suffocating. "Mom!" Max's voice was drowning in panic. "No!" Sarah kicked back, her foot connecting with something solid. The shadows hissed, scrambling back momentarily before rushing forward again, angry whispers electrifying the air. "This is where you belong. You drew them here. Let go of us!" Sarah screamed, rage pushing her forward despite the pull from the darkness. She wriggled free, holding tight to her kids, and they dashed toward the light. The wooden door creaked open, a groan that echoed throughout the basement as they stumbled into another room. This one was lit, but the brightness stung their eyes, revealing grotesque images adorning the walls, faces twisted in pain, emotions captured forever in a mural of despair. "No, no, no!" Sarah's breath hitched as she moved closer, drawn in horror. The faces were familiar. They were the children who had once lived in her neighborhood, their expressions frozen in terror. "What is happening?" Ella cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. "They're trapped," Max sobbed, clutching his teddy bear. "Like us!" Every instinct told Sarah to run, to flee from this hell. But the light pulsed, and within it, she saw another figure, tiny, hair matted and eyes bulging. "Mommy!" it called, a voice unmistakably sweet yet twisted. "No!" Sarah wailed, fear spilling over into the light. The figure reached out, its tiny hand beckoning, pulling her into a memory she couldn't afford to relive. "They will come for you just like they did for me." Time seemed to warp, each second stretching into an eternity as shadows coiled around them, closing in faster now, waiting to reclaim their due. And as Sarah felt the icy tendrils Ridge up her legs, she realized the truth. It was not just darkness chasing them. It was their past, alive and hungry. What if we don't make it out? Max whispered, trembling. Then we must fight, Sarah declared, her voice barely a whisper, resonating against the whispered echoes of betrayal. A chilling thought crossed her mind. What if this place wasn't just a prison? What if it was their ultimate undoing? The room began to twist once more, the faces in the mural contorting in malicious glee. Shadows closed in, and Sarah could hear the whispers blending into a single, terrible message. You can't escape your past. Gritting her teeth, Sarah clenched Ella's and Max's hands tighter. We won, T! She gasped, ready to defy the dark when the floor beneath them suddenly cracked open, revealing another abyss deeper, darker, and more ominous than before. Follow me! Sarah cried, and the three of them leapt, plunging into the unknown, hearts racing with the wild hope that anything was waiting on the other side. What awaited them in the realm of shadows? Would they find answers or more horrors yet buried? Falling, weightless in the dark, Sarah felt time dissolve around them. Gravity surrendered, and for a moment, fear slipped away, leaving only the sensation of floating. The air was thick with a chilling humidity, wrapping around them like an undesired embrace. Then, a harsh thud kicked against the floor, and they landed hard on the ground, the impact jolting them. Max whimpered, the sound reverberating in the quiet, while Ella cried out, Mom! Shh! Sarah urged, her voice a mix of panic and urgency, as she pushed herself to a sitting position. Around them, shadows danced in chaotic rhythm, darting across warped walls that seemed to warp and glow in an unnatural light. What is this place? Max stuttered, eyes wide as he looked around, the adventure turning into a nightmare. I don't know, Sarah whispered, her gut twisting. The air tasted sour, heavy with sadness that clung to her lungs. Distant echoes, too faint to decipher, slithered through the chamber, wrapping around them like a suffocating shroud. They stood, brushing dust off their clothes. Sexual panic surged through Sarah as she scanned the new room. The walls appeared to pulsate, shifting between familiarity and malevolence, infused with colors that felt wrong, grays and sickly greens. Before them, a tunnel stretched, dark and foreboding, but at its end glimmered another faint light. Over there! Ella pointed, voice trembling. Suddenly, the whispers grew louder, swirling around them, echoing fragments of childhood fears and distorted memories. Find us, free us, no! Sarah shouted, shaking her head as if to clear away the sound. Not today! We're not doing this! And as if understanding her defiance, the shadows thickened, dark shapes shifting and morphing in the corners of her vision. Sarah felt a mounting pressure, like the darkness was pressing in, gnashing its teeth and demanding entry into their souls. Mom! Max grasped her hand tighter, his small fingers quivering with dread. It's okay, baby, we'll get through this, she reassured, clenching his small hand tightly, knowing she had to be the anchor. She pulled Ella close, forming a protective barrier around them, holding their fears at bay for another moment. Let us move, Sarah urged, setting her jaw. As they staggered toward the light, she noticed the ground beneath them, a mosaic of photographs embedded in the dirt. Faces young and vibrant, all staring with expressions of pure terror. Each photo tugged at her memories she had buried long ago, ones she feared were about to claw their way back out. As they pressed on, Sarah's breath came shorter, panic bubbling in her chest like a boiling pot. We have to hurry, the light ahead flickered violently, growing brighter then dimming, a primordial pulse in sync with her racing heart. Shadows lunged toward the kids, a sudden rush that made Sarah turn. Mommy! Ella screamed, and with that cry, Sarah's heart ripped open. She spun, hoisting them up, moving fiercely, desperate to shield them from whatever nightmare lurked behind. The whispers were transforming, morphing into cries and laughter, echoing from the photos on the ground, breaking the silence like shattering glass. Each frame yanked emotions, pulling at her soul, similar faces appearing in the depths of those screams. They ran, darkness flaring behind them as a cold wind rose, whistling through the flickering light. The walls began to constrict, pressing closer as if the very tunnel sought to consume them. Faster! Sarah shrieked, urgency fueling her legs at last as she plunged toward the light. It grew hotter and brighter, pulling her forward with an irresistible force. But just as they reached the edge, a hand grabbed at Sarah's ankle, icy fingers tracing through her skin. She stumbled, nearly falling to the ground while dragging the kids along. "Let go!" she screamed, the terror laced in her voice. The images below pulsed with energy, contorting in agony, faces melding into one living mass, crying for release. With one heaving pull, Sarah freed herself and raced into the light. The moment they crossed, an amplified roar erupted behind them. The darkness surged inside, but the blinding glow closed the entrance with a deafening crash, sealing them away from whatever horrors lay behind. They found themselves in another room, this one sterile and stark, lights flickering menacingly above. It was devoid of childhood innocence, adorned only with rusty chains and rotting furniture. An oppressive silence now enveloped them, pressing down just as tightly. "What is going on?" Max whispered, tears tracking down his frightened face. "I don't know," Sarah said, fear clawing at her throat. Then, out of the shadows, a low chuckle emerged, warm and inviting, yet twisted. "Welcome home," the voice echoed in the corners of her mind, a familiar taunt that made her blood run cold. Sarah turned slowly, dread tasting bitter on her tongue. The room shifted, a deep chill washing over her as the voice rang out again. "We've been waiting. Could they survive this time, or were they caught in a game of their past?" What awaited them now as the eyes of the darkness watched, hungry and alive? The shadows began to breathe, swirling with a life of their own. Sarah's heart raced as she squinted into the murky depths of the corners, searching for the source of that sinister voice. Her instincts screamed at her to flee, but icy fingers grasped her mind, fueling a fear she thought was long buried. "Mom, what's happening?" Max's voice trembled, breaking the heavy silence. Ella clutched his hand, wide-eyed and paralyzed with dread. "Just stay close," Sarah replied, her voice more a plea than reassurance. The room distorted before her, walls undulating like a living organism. The low chuckle echoed again, a sound that clawed at her sanity. It was so familiar, so wrapped in the echoes of her own childhood. "We've been waiting for you, Sarah," it whispered, sending a shiver down her spine. "Who are you? What do you want?" she shouted, summoning courage she barely felt. The chuckle morphed into a cacophony of laughter, echoing around them, a taunting symphony that twisted her gut. "You remember, don't you?" As if summoned by her fear, ghostly images began to materialize before her, flickering like old film reels. Faces from her past stared back, eyes wide with terror. Friends. Family. Each one trapped in their moment of despair, forever frozen in a nightmare. Why were they here? Were they the keys to her escape or reminders of a past she wished to forget? "Let them go," Max pleaded, stepping forward bravely, his small form shaking. As he did, one of the images rearranged itself. It was her younger self, standing in the waning sunlight of a summer evening. A day of laughter turned to screams in Sarah's mind. She remembered that day while she had stumbled upon a hidden door in a backyard shed. Behind it lay secrets she wasn't ready to uncover. "I didn't mean to," the child Sarah cried out, as flames ignited around her, crashing waves of despair flooding in. "Please! No!" Sudden dread enveloped Sarah. "No! You can't!" she shouted. But the specters shrieked wildly, their pains surging through the air, igniting her memories. Her brother's face twisted in fear, her mother's cries echoing through the night, warning her about the dark forces residing just beneath their reality. Each face unleashed a flood of memories, pulling at her, reminding her of the night she wished to bury forever. And then they advanced. Twisted versions of her past echoed around her, bloodied and rage-filled. "Join us, Sarah! Relive the darkness!" The voices clamored, gnarled hands reaching toward her, fingers elongated and claw-like. "Stay back!" She thrust her arms out in front of the kids, heart pounding against her ribcage like a hammer. The overwhelming surge of fear threatened to drown her, darkness swirling within her mind like a storm. Just then, the flickering lights overhead surged, casting long, grotesque shadows across the floor. The ghostly figures hesitated, as if the light was an unspoken barrier. But the shadows weren't finished with them yet. They huddled, retreating slightly, but Sarah could see their eyes glimmering with malevolence, plotting, waiting. "Mom! What do we do?" Ella's voice sliced through the fog of confusion. "I don't know." Sarah could feel the walls drawing in again, suffocating. The laughter intensified, merging into a chaotic symphony of her deepest fears. Images flickered, flashes of betrayal and loss, the memories intertwining until she struggled to separate reality from nightmare. All at once, the shadows lunged, the ghostly figures clawing at her sanity, desperate for a homecoming. "You can't escape your truth, Sarah." In that moment, each word dug deeper, echoing through her heart, fueled by her regrets. She had to break the cycle, had to rescue her children, or they would be consumed by the darkness. "Max, Ella, follow me!" she yelled, pivoting to search for any escape. But the room twisted again, forming a barricade of shadows. The air thickened, pressing down on them. Suddenly, a cold breeze swept in, carrying a soft, chilling whisper. "You'll lose them like you lost everything else." Her breath hitched, blindsided by the enormity of that dread. Would she be forced to relive her greatest sorrows to save them? Could she face her past? As the ghostly hands reached closer, one last, desperate thought screamed through her mind. She had to find the hidden door. It was the only way out. But could she face what lay behind that door again? Gathering strength, Sarah shouted defiantly, "We'll find a way out. We aren't afraid of you." And in that defiance, the room trembled, shadows recoiling momentarily. For a fleeting second, hope sparked in the darkness, but at what cost? "What will you sacrifice to escape, Sarah?" The voice chuckled ominously, as the shadows hungered ever closer. The question lingered in the air, heavy with fatality. She had to decide. But how much was she willing to lose to ensure their survival? As they readied to make their move, a shiver ran down her spine. The darkness was waiting for her answer, and it would not be patient. The shadows writhed and swayed, pressing closer around them, their whispers boiling into chaotic demands. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest, the weight of her past crashing down as she faced those agonizing truths. "I will fight!" she shouted, trying to galvanize every ounce of courage as fear clawed at her throat. Ella and Max clung to her tightly. "You have to protect us, Mommy!" Max sobbed, and Sarah's heart splintered into 1,000 pieces. Their innocent eyes, wide with fear, fueled her determination. They were her world. "Together," Sarah urged, rallying their combined strength. "We face the dark together." Glimmers of hope flickered through her fear as she yanked them closer and scanned for an escape. The darkness lunged forward, howling with frustration as if her declaration had stung it. "You can't change what's been done. You belong to the shadows." But in that moment of clarity, as the grotesque forms undulated around them, something inside Sarah ignited. She remembered the stories her mother had told, whispers of light and courage, remnants of strength that had always kept a flicker of hope alive in her spirit. "You're wrong," she insisted, voice cracking under pressure but firm nonetheless. "You don't define me. You never will." A shimmering light sparked behind her, illuminating a hidden doorway. It pulsed gently, beckoning her even as the shadows clawed at her heels. "Look!" Ella shouted, her small hand pointing. "Go! It's our chance!" Sarah urged, and together they sprinted towards the light. As they dashed ahead, tendrils of darkness lashed at them, but their resolve pushed them forward. The light engulfed them, swirling around them like a warm embrace. The shadows screamed in fury. They could feel the malevolence clawing at their backs, desperate to reclaim their prey. Suddenly, Sarah slipped through the doorframe and into blinding daylight, the basement's oppressive grip relinquishing them at last. They stumbled onto the grass of Cedar Grove, sunlight painting them gold. "Mom!" Max gasped, his voice bright with relief. "What happened?" Ella asked, glancing at the house, now distant and shadowed. "I think," Sarah breathed, realization flooding her mind. "We broke free. We confronted it together." She pulled them close, feeling their warmth against her, chasing away the lingering shadows of fear. But even as they stood on the threshold of safety, Sarah felt a weight pressing on her chest, knowing the specters of the past may linger, no matter how far they run. We still have to confront what remains, she murmured, glancing back at the house that had birthed their worst nightmares. Does that mean? Ella started, tremors in her voice. No, Sarah interrupted, her voice tight with conviction. It means we learn from it. It means we're more than what has haunted us. We grow stronger. The words poured out like molten lava, each one a promise crafted from pain and hope. What if it tries to come back? Max trembled as he held tight onto the tattered teddy, reminding Sarah of the innocence they fought to protect. Mommy will protect you, Sarah reassured him, squeezing their hands tighter. We'll face whatever comes, together. This time, we won't be silent. We will tell our story. In that moment, she embraced her children tighter, bodies suspended in a gentle cocoon of hope and love. Outside, Cedar Grove seemed alive again, laughter drifting through the air, the sun glowing against each leaf as if welcoming them back to life, an unspoken promise echoing through the summer breeze. Walking toward the swing set, they paused to glance at their old house one last time. It doesn't have to be a prison, Sarah said softly, her heart swelling with love and resolution. We have each other. And that's what matters. They turned away, ready to forge new memories filled with laughter, hope, and resilience, knowing they had broken free from their darkness. No longer defined by fear, they were bound by their strength. You okay, Mommy? Ella asked, inching closer. More than okay, sweet girl, Sarah replied, a dawn of bravery growing in her chest. This is just the beginning of our journey. As they stepped forward, glittering sunlight illuminated their path, promising brighter days ahead, filled with adventure, laughter, and the immense power of facing fears together. And together, they walked toward a future entirely their own. You need to subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who absolutely need to see this conclusion. Only true fans know the importance of supporting the channel. Let us keep this going.